Imagine a family not understanding your needs as a disabled person, but being continuously made to believe you're the problem and everything you do is wrong, only to become a suspect of two deaths, both within the family. Your diagnosis? Autism. Focus, the behavior of how you acted in interrogation. If you made it this far, sorry. If you made it this far, thanks so much for being here. And if you like true crime and disabilities, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend, and leave a comment below too if you're new here. I'd love to say hi. Leave comments below of any recent true crime disability case that you know of. Check the link of cases in history of true crime disabilities. I've covered 3 cases so far. One takes place in 1939 Germany, and the other 2 are present day. This would be my 4th one. I started doing true crime disability since I'm a disabled autistic adult with ADHD, PTSD, and just general anxiety. I myself was in a true crime docuseries known as Escaping Twin Flames on Netflix, as Twin Flames Universe is under investigation by the Attorney General in Michigan. And if I can do any updates, I will during these true crime cases. But today I have no updates. And today I will be covering Carmen Family Deaths on Netflix. It is a documentary. It's long form versus short form. Like I was in a docuseries, so they were episodes versus, so like an hour episode. I think it was a total of 3 hours. This documentary is an hour and like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So it's like 1.5 episodes of the docuseries I was in. As a reminder, this is all real life, real people. I'm a real person. All these people I'm covering are real human beings. And I try to take this as compassionately as possible. And the focus of this is going to be Nathan. In mine, I am going to bring up family history and more, just to bring to light things that maybe you don't know about. Or maybe you are autistic yourself. I'd love to hear your take on this case too. This is just my own personal opinion. Please take the time to do your own research. That's so vitally important. Don't just take what I say. Do your own research and form your own opinion. Those are all very important things. And let me continue. So first I want to go over what the autism spectrum, what is autism on the spectrum? I'm even showing right now what autism can do. Misusing words, misthinking. I do have a script I write that I can lean on when I need to. I'm trying to be better about it. I do some memorizing beforehand. So I do typical autistic things of writing a script, memorizing a script, those things. So you might see my eyes move differently. Just know I am in tune to you. I'm doing the best I can. And I hope to get better and better at doing this. Thanks so much for being here. Again, please like and subscribe. Okay, so I'm going to first go over what autism is as a spectrum. Autism is shown differently through each individual autistic person. Even though no 2 autistic people are alike, we can relate. Let me know if you're autistic below and if you've related to others that are autistic in some way or another. And there are things in common. A key factor in being autistic is struggling. Like, I didn't mean struggle beforehand, but was an accident, but I'm keeping it. Struggling in language and expressing language in the way neurotypicals understand it. Our language is by far more blunt and to the point versus a neurotypical likes to speak in metaphors and not saying what they actually mean. At least that's what I've personally picked up on, in my personal opinion. An autistic person can come off as not feeling anything due to delay in processing events. So taking in the information, understanding it, being able to relay it, will say it back to someone exactly as it was. The processing, like I'm delayed in processing. If you were to give me a bunch of information in an hour or talk to me for an hour straight, I would probably only understand 10% of the information you're giving me. And maybe 2 days later, get all the information you gave me in that hour, just to show you an example of processing with myself. So people are taking in every detail of the people and places around them. So as an autistic person, you are taking what you lack in language and taking the details around you of the people, places, things happening, very aware of everything, including yourself, which is a plus to be aware of yourself, because then you can make modifications of yourself too if you need to change it in order to, I guess, meet society standards, which sucks to meet society standards. In my personal opinion, I like being me, autistically me. but that's the truth. So you're taking in a lot of information. It might not seem like it to someone who is not of the neurodivergent essence or autistic, specifically what we're focused on in this case. Nathan was autistic. So yes, we have monotone voices. I have a monotone voice. The only time I change it to like hi is when I'm not sure, because I know that signals to someone who's neurotypical that I'm not sure, or they'll take it as I'm lying, which I'm not. That's just my unsure, high-pitched sound or uncomfortable sound, which is normal for a neurotypical too. That's where I learned that from. You learn behaviors from neurotypicals in order to survive in a neurotypical world as an autistic individual. So most autistic people do talk in monotone. It's not because they don't feel anything, or if they use AAC, it's not because they do not feel anything. It's because that's just the way we speak. Not everyone speaks in monotone either, just to put that out there. And not everyone speaks on an AAC. Each individual speaks in their own manner. Some do not speak at all, depending on how they choose to only do sign language or just to show you in pointing. Pointing is my personal favorite. Just using as many examples as possible that there are many ways to speak language without actually speaking the language I'm speaking right now. Okay. So I watched the Carmen Family Deaths twice to make sure I stuck with facts without bias, as I'm autistic. So I only went off the facts, and because I'm a slow processor, I had to rewatch it because the first time I watched it, I definitely was biased. But I also wasn't wrong with some of what I felt in it. Most individuals that are autistic, such as myself, are blunt and honest, as I brought up. But anyways, I will be bringing up theories and my opinions on the now cold case of both Nathan's grandpa and mother's deaths. First, I would like to point out in the documentary, it seemed like, to me, in my personal opinion, the detectives for both cases already thought it was Nathan due to him acting autistic. I watched and wrote down some of the things Nathan said that was very autistic of him. If you weren't neurodivergent, I can definitely see it being taken the wrong way. Nathan, throughout every interrogation and press conference, acted as an autistic person would, even was clearly coached on some things to say. You have to be coached to speak neurotypical language. You have to be coached. It's different when it's a neurotypical, coaching a neurotypical, then that's suspicion. But if it's an autistic person, we already don't know how to function in the neurotypical world in the first place. It wasn't built for us in the first place. So that's something to consider. Moving forward, let's start with the family dynamic, which was abusive, starting with Nathan's grandpa. The family said John, so Nathan's grandpa, his name is John, was physically and mentally abusive since he would slap his wife around as he would his daughters and was a very wealthy businessman. He made his own wealth making his family a Greek dynasty because they're Greek. They kind of brought that up a little bit in the documentary. The family said it wasn't bad since no one died due to it. Let me make myself clear. Any kind of abuse, in my personal opinion, is not normal and should not be accepted due to no one dying. Most cases where there is no one talking about it because they're afraid of the punishment from the abuser leads to death. So just because there never was that, that's not loving behavior at all. That's a huge red flag for everyone out there. Huge red flag. Remember that. By the family's personal accounts and documentary, I feel Nathan and his mother were both targets of his grandfather. When Nathan first started living in an RV in front of the house, refusing to come out, he was sent away into a hospital stay in confinement, where the abuser, his grandfather, visited with pizza and newspapers. He didn't believe Nathan should have been locked up in the hospital. I feel he shouldn't have either, especially if he was dealing with undiagnosed mental illness on top of a language disability, autism, but we have no proof besides what Nathan's father and aunt said about him. They brought up mental health, but they never brought up what that mental health might be. It didn't seem like depression. To me, it seemed like just normal autistic behavior, but that's just my own personal experience being autistic and my own personal opinion. So we don't actually have the information to tell us if he did have a mental illness because none of his family members were psychologists or people within the mental health field. I trust their perspective, especially women in the mental health field, more than a male, unless he is a non-biased male, then I trust him. Yeah. So, and on that note, if you guys want me to bring on some of my friends, like I can bring back Dr. Robin Stern on gaslighting. We can go over, I'll try to find a case for her to go over with me, the disability cases, or Dr. C. I'd love to have Dr. C on coercive control, since that is a theme on this channel, or any other psych like Dr. Shannon, Dr. Tabitha. We have a lot of choices from, I will leave the link to the whole set list of psychologists from my podcast. And I will get sidetracked. That's my ADHD kicking in. So if you like sidetrackism that are still within topic, this is a channel for you. All right. I feel Nathan, on the topic of coercion, I feel Nathan was coerced over time by his grandfather with money. Nathan even said in an interview that his grandpa was the only person that would get mad at him for not caring about wanting or needing money. His mother said the same thing. At least his dad said. So his Nathan and his mom both said pretty much the same thing. But in Nathan's case, maybe his mom was autistic. But in Nathan's case, but we'll never know. He did the black and white thinking of right versus wrong. Money is looked at as a bad thing, as something you shouldn't like. At least society teaches you that. And in the first place, most autistic people don't really care about it either. We just learn the hard way that that's how you survive. Yeah, I just explained that. So that's the black and white moral code. So they're not caring about money. And now we're going to go back in some sequence of events here. So he was diagnosed around the age of 4 or 5 years of age, which is normal for a male, not a female, because we're just starting to, today in 2025, better understand that, hey, even girls around that age are also autistic. We just were too into the white straight male diagnosis. So yes, Nathan is your typical diagnosis age, but he didn't, in my personal opinion, get the support or love or acceptance he needed. But let's continue. Nathan was diagnosed with autism 4 or 5 years of age. Being autistic doesn't mean you're a loner, since I heard his father and family members continuously say in the documentary that he was a loner. He was not a loner. I like my alone time. It doesn't make me a loner. It's just my time to refill my cups so I can be available and ready to function like a normal human. Well, not as normal as a human as I can function as, considering I'm autistic. So to function as normal as possible. And I just went over the loner thing. There is too much stigma around being alone. Doesn't make you a loner unless you are a literal loner. So that means alone without needing to stay away or try to function like a normal human. That's the only difference. Needing rest. So needing rest is not bad. And then, as Nathan's dad described in the documentary, once Nathan's horse passed away as a teenager, he was never the same again. Autistic people grieve differently than neurotypical. So whether that's tears due to sadness or depression of staying away from others or not understand why someone passed away. I guess as a teenager, Nathan stayed in an RV that was 32 feet wide in front of the house and refused to leave it in his way of coping with the loss of his horse. He peed in cups and didn't even leave the RV, so Linda and his father sent him first to the hospital hold where his grandfather visited and brought him pizza. Nathan's parents weren't too happy about that. Something Nathan's grandfather always said was, "Without family, you have nothing." That's straight from the documentary, that quote. His grandfather took care of him, as was paying him up to $13,000 a month to Nathan. Since Nathan was autistic, he might also have had ODD. It seems like to me, but I'm not a clinical psychologist and cannot diagnose people. I'm just going off of what I have seen when I have worked with kids with ODD, which stands for oppositional defiant disorder. It can show itself in children being defiant or irritable. Always listen to a psychologist. And I'll leave links below again to the psychologists that I have interviewed so far, or therapists, and what they think. You got to see my face a little lower. Sorry about that, everyone. I didn't realize my face was low. Anyway, back to Nathan. In my personal opinion, I feel Nathan's grandfather had a huge influence on his behavior, since as a autistic person, you learn the behaviors of people around you in order to fit into society and sometimes be accepted, not always. If his grandfather, like his father said, was in his life, even though the hospital hold and he ended up staying with his grandfather, in my opinion, seemed toxic in the way he treated others, such as his own family and wife, by smacking them. Thought it was important to bring it up again, and having expectations for them to meet in order to receive love just isn't healthy. An example was promising Linda a Dunkin' Donut franchise only to trick her into working for him was one of the examples brought up in the documentary by Nathan's father. If Nathan learned this behavior from his grandfather and was not only influenced, who knows what things his grandfather said about his mother. Nathan didn't seem to have an exclusive, accepting family on autism, which is sometimes the case in families. There isn't a lot of information out there. And the information that is out there is misinformation that people take as facts when it's not. It comes from white supremacy rhetoric that still exists today. After Nathan's hospital psych hold in Middletown stay, he eventually was kidnapped in the middle of the night in his RV, taken to a behavioral camp in Utah for troubled teens. This is a horrible solution for anyone to say with disabilities, as most of these camps abuse the teenagers there into submissive behavior. It doesn't change the behavior, they just receive abuse and are made to believe they are worthless. As an autistic person, society already teaches you that you're worthless. So, in my personal opinion, he received even more abuse and could be why the RV became a safe space for him not to have to deal with family that seemed to not love him. And that's just my personal opinion, nothing more. Of course, after his grandfather's death, was December 20th in 2013. He had his head shot off. The only spot that had blood was in the bed his grandfather was lying in. Nathan was the last to see him, not like he had supportive family. They lacked understanding of autism and how an autistic brain works different from a neurotypical one. The interrogation happened right after they spoke to Nathan's mom first. It would have been great if Nathan could have brought or have been given the option of a disabilities advocate because an autistic person language is different, as I've explained multiple times in this. Nathan was autistic. He needed almost like a translator so the advocate could play translations, especially if words become jumbled up, which they did. I saw that in the documentary, or processing isn't fast enough for the interrogators, which showed they had no patience for him when he tried processing information to answer in a neurotypical correct way. Nathan pleaded the fifth when he didn't know what to say. That was one of the patterns I picked up on. I like using my pattern recognition on humans. I don't use it for too many other things or for coercive control. That's why I'm looking at these cases, and I do believe Nathan was coerced into everything that happened and that there might have been an unknown other person in the interview process. He needed an advocate to help him through the interrogation of being a suspect of his grandfather's death. An example, when authorities asked him if his aunt had told him about what happened to his grandfather since he had an outburst about his head being blown off as a way to process the information based off of the details he was perceiving. This is what Nathan replied to the authorities with. I still don't know the manner of death. Obviously, the circumstance that you seem to be treating this is either a murder or a suicide. What I deduce, I know that you're calling it suspicious because that's what Valerie said. So that's his aunt. No, she just said he passed away. The thing is, they weren't specific. You do, in fact, need specifics. That's why autistic people even ask very specific, probably unusual questions to those not on the spectrum and not a neurodivergent. So if they would have rephrase the way they asked, like asking if your mom, dad, specifics, so naming mom, dad, things like that. If they would have named that, they would have gotten more information guaranteed. Because he was very honest in his interrogation, besides the one lie that he said. He lied once, but he knew it would have been taken out of hand, so that's why he backtracked, it seemed like to me personally. But if they would have changed the questioning to this is an example I wrote of, were you told by your father or mother or another family member about how your grandfather died? I think they would have gotten a much clearer answer if they would have asked him that way. Part of what became Nathan's alibi was taking a wrong turn to meet his mom at 3 a.m. in a parking lot. I'm autistic, and even places I know really well, I still take wrong turns. If Nathan was under a high level of stress, yeah, when I'm under a high level of stress, I go wrong turns. And when I'm tired and 3 a.m., autistic people need their schedule of sleep. It's just a fact. That is, in fact, a fact. So it's probably past his bedtime, too. Well, Nathan's personal. I don't know what Nathan's personal schedule was, but whatever it may have been. So he might have been under a high level of stress before even starting to drive it, which would have led to his wrong turn. He probably felt guilty due to taking a wrong turn. I always feel guilty when I do that too. Eventually came up with a weapon which he brought. So eventually, after I guess getting enough stuff to back, they got a search warrant and found that he had bought the exact gun that shot off his grandfather's head, November 11th of 2013. So almost over a month before the incident. They said it's the same exact gun, but they didn't find any marks or anything. So there still isn't enough backing proof, in my personal opinion, there. It's just based off of there's that. And the fact he didn't have the gun makes me still believe that he had someone he was covering for, someone he bought that for. and he wouldn't know. So the gun was bought out of state with an out of state license, so it wasn't the original license of his own. As an autistic person, he wouldn't be aware of this unless his special interest was IDs, not necessarily guns. Or he could have had a special interest in guns, but either way, he would have had to been taught and shown what to do. This isn't first nature like it is for a neurotypical. This isn't first nature at all for someone who's autistic. And he seemed to be, I could be very wrong, who knows, lower cognitively. Even in his interviews, he showed that he might have used big words, but he probably learned those big words through research and trying to understand words better. Like I do that. I look up words all the time, but I don't use them unless I really, really like them. I feel like this was the first clue he was covering for someone. He wouldn't know. I just described that. Anyways, so he already a judge later in time throughout the case. Well, I think it was the attorney general that just threw out the case, so there might not have been enough evidence because they don't just throw out cases randomly. And in the documentary, they never described why the case was thrown out. But I don't know if the judge or the attorney general gave an answer. They had enough evidence, at least for a warrant, but apparently they didn't have enough evidence to go through with a trial on his grandfather's case. So that leads me to believe he must not have done it. And there must be someone else in this scenario, even for the second part. So then came the fishing trip. So this is in 20, I don't know the exact time period. It's like 5 years later, maybe 10 years later. Oh, I think it was 4 years later. Okay, then came the fishing trip. They decided, both knowing it was unsafe, to go to the South Block Island, because even verbalizing to family members, Linda, his mom, had even said it's not safe. They both were aware of it. For well seasons fishing, neither one of them were, and both of them were aware of that. His mom, a great swimmer, allegedly. This feels planned on both parts, Nathan and his mom. I feel like there may have been a plan in place by his mom, not by Nathan. The planning ahead part of survival is a normal autistic behavior, so pre-planned. So the water thing, the emergency stuff that was packed, that is just normal. I pre-pack, sometimes over pre-pack. I was, yeah, I over pre-pack of thinking of every horrible scenario that can happen. So I'm writing it ahead, which I guess is not normal neurotypical behavior. I learned that later in time, that not normal neurotypical behavior, because I'm not neurotypical, nor was Nathan. So makes sense why he packed ahead. And Nathan seemed to want to be caught. The insurance claim of $85,000, since they found holes, he had witnesses that did holes ahead of time. There was some planning involved, but I feel like his mom was involved in the planning too. And then I want to go over, which we'll have on the side of the screen here for you all to read. I'll be reading it too. They found a notepad when they did the warrant for his mother in his car. He said, well, I want to first premise this by saying these are normal thoughts of an autistic person processing. So I write down stuff. Let me show you. I've shown it multiple times and will continue to. So this becomes more of an understanding because this is an inclusive space. I wrote down notes. Here's my notes. And then I wrote down, which I'm reading off of on the screen, stuff for me to better process and be able to give the information out to all of you. So these are normal processing and thoughts. So what he wrote down, doing first, third, second, fourth, I used to write in that way. I don't write in that way anymore, but since autism has to do with language disorder and processing and understanding information, whether verbal, written, or shown with pictures. So writing down can help the processing the information that you've taken. So grabbing it, processing it, understanding it, writing it down. I have to write it down to better process the information, even to give it out, because I love doing these cases and sharing them with all of you. I have to write it down. Sometimes I have to write it down twice, or rewatch, or relearn, or see how other people are handling some cases, since most of these cases that I will be handling might not be as readily available to the public or out there. Some might be, so you guys have the heads up, but here we go. We're going to go with what he wrote first. First thing he wrote in the notepad: 1, emotionally, I'm not sure I can bear another interview. That makes sense to me. Each interview, he is being given a lot of information he may not be processing or understanding right away. Second thing, philosophically, the idea of proving one's innocent propels me. If he wasn't innocent, why would he feel he needs to prove his innocence? Well, for one, no support by family in the first place, and everyone else thinks he did it. This sentence he wrote proves to me he was innocent, just miscommunicated his innocence. This is just to me, so my opinion. Third, he wrote, generally police are corrupt and often criminal organizations. Additionally, I've been advised by my lawyer to remain silent. The thing he wrote could have been influenced by his grandfather's belief of police, or he watched something on police, or heard his mom or dad say something in order to form this general opinion of police. The additional part he wrote, autistic people have a tendency to speak the truth no matter what. He probably had even more information than what was given in filmed interrogation, in my personal opinion. That would have made him seem guilty due to paying attention to details. Autistic people are very detail-oriented wherever they are on the spectrum. I know for me, people I care about, I tend to naturally, whether I want to or not, pay close attention to details and how someone operates. The physical ones, the eyes, everything you see. So even with me, I've started paying attention to details when I rewatch some of the films of this. His dad still holds on to the belief that it was a terrible event and Nathan is innocent. I believe he was innocent too. There isn't enough evidence or factual scenarios that make sense to me. Nathan said himself asking for reassurance, did I do the right thing? On top of that, Nathan may have been experienced abuse physically and mentally, and sadly, people with disabilities being abused is so underreported. I would assume the percentage would be high due to underreporting. I would think he would be afraid to call the cops on family members with what was ingrained in him by what he wrote about what he thought of them. Even as they asked about his supposed last moments with his mom, the interrogation asked what he did with his mom as he saw the water in the boat and if he heard his mom. Nathan said, I did not hear my mom. When I was in the water, I did not see her. I think she swam away to the nearest shore and started a new life, is my theory, or she drowned in her escape. I think there was information that she held that none of us will ever get now. I think she had a lot of information, as he was also hiding information. I don't know what that information was. I don't think Nathan was the sole bearer of information. I feel like his mom had something she couldn't live with, in my personal opinion. So the chicken pox, which was his boat name, which I think is funny and cute. His boat name was so he asked for $85,000. One of the things that his insurance company looked into, they were about to pay him, and then they got back with, I guess, a lawsuit against him. And just to note, when he was alive, he was well paid by his grandfather, so there wasn't really a reason to. And on top of that, he was in will of things, and they brought up in the documentary that he asked really specific questions like what order do people have to die in order to receive the will. If the will was so important to him, he wouldn't have committed suicide, in my personal opinion. He would have waited to receive the money if that was important to him. Just things to think about. In 2023, Nathan was arrested and set to go on trial in October of 2023 for the death of his mother. He ended up committing suicide and hanging himself with a shoelace, which to me doesn't show guilt, just shows how far he was willing to go to cover for someone, whether that was family or a friend of the family. I believe he was innocent and just miscommunicated information. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And until next Saturday, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Peace.